Hello, School Transportation Nation. Tony Corpin here with STN. We're glad you made it to the podcast. It's brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing. In just a moment, Taylor Ekbatani is going to be speaking with Belle Tromp, Director of Transportation at Snoqualmie Valley School District in Washington State. But before we dive into the headlines with Mr. Ryan Gray, guys, want to talk to you about disciplinary issues on the school bus. Our friends at TransFinder have taken a special interest in this issue. Their goal is to get kids the help they need as early as possible. So TransFinder has created Form Finder, which makes record keeping easy for these types of incidents. You can follow up easier, and they can be used district-wide. Form Finder is embedded in TransFinder's Route Finder Plus solution, and it's included for free, and you can use it for many different use cases, going far beyond student conduct. Plus, it can be customized for any form you have in the district's needs. Imagine one clearinghouse for all your district forms. You can learn more about Form Finder by emailing getplus@transfinder.com or giving them a call at 800-373-3609. All right, Ryan, welcome to the podcast. Let's dive right into the headlines here.
Hello, Nation. Yes. I'd be interested if that Get Plus can, it's talking about student conduct and whatnot. Can it determine if students are bringing weapons to school? Probably not. Definitely not, I would say. But unfortunately, this is back in the headlines. I'm sure everyone out there in the nation has by now heard or read about the 6-year-old student. Yes, 6 years old in Newport News, Virginia on Friday, January 6th, pulled out a gun in class, shot his teacher in the chest.
Yeah, shocking, Ryan. Shocking.
Thankfully, the teacher is sort of survived. As last I read from the superintendent, was recovering, was already talking on the computer with colleagues and family. So she's going to make it seems a full recovery. That student is being held and being evaluated by medical staff, probably psychiatric staff. There's talk about the parent, the mother being charged. We've seen this kind of a trend where parents are being held accountable now for the actions of their children when there's some kind of gun violence. But again, 6 years old, I think it just was really shocking to everyone. I was reading one of the many national articles. I think this was on CNN. A security expert was talking about metal detectors in schools and how in certain areas, especially urban areas, fair or not, metal detectors are going into high schools, maybe some middle schools. But this expert said, but not in a million years would we think that we would need to do that with elementary kids. I mean, what was this, a first grader, I think? It's just insane to think about. And the teacher, by the way, had the wherewithal, wounded, to make sure all the rest of her students got out of the class and evacuated. Other staff responded almost immediately, tackled the student. The student hit one of the responders, probably another teacher or school staff. So some serious issues going on here. So I think it brings back to light what we've been talking about, Tony, for years now when we're looking at security and are kind of trying to wrap our heads around all this school violence, these school shootings, is what are student transporters doing to try to safeguard their school buses? We've obviously had a number of times training at our STN Expos on weapon concealment. Chris Dorn did that several times many years ago at STN Expo Reno. His dad, Mike Dorn, of course, one of the preeminent school security experts in the world, has talked a lot about that. But certainly it just, again, gives us pause to reconsider what we're doing, what we're not doing, the training of our staff to try to be vigilant and, proactive and try to make sure that something like this never happens, and especially that the school bus is not a conduit to something like this happening.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Ryan, you do your best to train people, and these are moments that are teaching moments to say, hey guys, what are our security procedures for this? How are we using maybe our forms like Form Finder to register student incidents, right? Is there a history of behavior issues? Are we seeing something that may toss up red flags, right? Because usually it's not one incident. It's a compilation of many incidents where either the child's being bullied. Clearly, the child had something very wrong. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. They're not around guns, so they don't know about that. But maybe in this child's home, weapons are readily available. Many places in America, California, where I live, you don't see it as much. But there's many homes. Firearms are a regular thing, right? So it seems shocking to some and maybe not to others. But the fact that a 6-year-old was brandishing a gun, fired it in a school, clearly concerning. It can happen anytime, anywhere. We've seen it time and time again. Thankfully, it wasn't some larger incident, but I think, I think our director of transportation, Shay Coates, we've had him at STN Expo in Indianapolis. I remember seeing him there, and transportation does a great job. And these are just opportunities to go back to your staff and just kind of ground them and say, guys, what can we do better? How can we all, nation, take this moment and readdress our drivers and say, guys, what are we doing? What do we look out for? What are the red flags? Let's go back to the training. So I think that's really kind of the lesson. Tail of the tape, Brian.
Absolutely. And, here we are, we're ramping up to conference season. Our STN Expo Indy is just about 5 months away or so and some change.
Scary. 5 months. I can't believe it.
I know. And Reno is, right on its heels about 6 weeks later. Already, planning some security topics. We're going to have our law enforcement expert, Brett Brooks from Missouri. He's going to come out to Reno this year and he's going to talk about security. He was out in Indianapolis last year, looking to have some other compelling security topics in Indianapolis as well. But, certainly that's what we try to do. We try to keep our thumb on the pulse of what's going on. And obviously, I remember back when Brett was talking last summer, and the big conversation was Uvalde, right? We just were coming off the heels of that tragedy. I mean, talk about something bigger happening, Tony. I mean, that takes the cake, and so that had only happened a few weeks before. And so certainly there was a lot of interest in that. Hopefully, again, we don't have any more school shootings, but I think Education Week put together a graphic. I saw that there was something like 200 gun incidents in schools last year. So it's certainly not getting better. And to your point, all we can do here as an industry is promote as much training and as much awareness as possible.
Yeah, I totally agree, Ryan. It's one of those things at the end of the day, as an industry, it didn't happen around a school bus. It didn't happen on a school bus. Doesn't mean it can't, but
it could happen. Yeah.
It could, right? And we need to be aware. I think the question even you and I talked about was that child on a school bus? Because a lot of the reports didn't really come back and say that. And then we were just surmising, oh, well, maybe the parent brought them to school that day. They didn't ride the bus or whatever.
Yeah.
But regardless, it could have been that child had the weapon on the school bus. So it's just keeping those telltale signs aware and kind of just keeping everything top of mind. So
absolutely.
Very, very, very interesting. I know some of the other headlines, Ryan, we saw some NTSB focusing on drug use amongst school bus drivers. That's another concerning thing, right?
Well, not school bus drivers per se. They're looking at, just kind of general use or misuse of drugs and alcohol by drivers, by motorists. But, this was before Christmas, one of their latest recommendations where they're asking NHTSA and their fatality analysis research data to do a deeper dive on this. But in terms of school buses, it was just last year that NTSB issued a recommendation for commercial drivers on alcohol use. And it was talking about some passive technology that can detect alcohol use by drivers. I spoke with Kristen Poland at National Transportation Safety Board. She said that NTSB is not so concerned about alcohol use or misuse by drivers. I mean, school bus drivers shouldn't be doing it at all, right? But unfortunately, we do see headlines out there far too often. But NTSB is not as concerned about school bus drivers drinking as they are truck drivers, commercial truck drivers, over-the-road drivers. But they were really hoping that the industry would look at their recommendation and more so be cognizant of the need for additional and enhanced oversight of drivers. We've seen that rear its ugly head over and over again in a lot of NTSB's investigations. That recommendation last year centered, on the Baltimore and Chattanooga crashes of several years ago. They were very high-profile crashes, and there was lack of oversight by both the school bus contractor that employed those drivers and the school districts. Just because there's a contractor name on the side of the school bus doesn't mean the school district should not be paying very close attention. They should be. These are their students. These are their children. They're the wards for these kids during the school day, so they can't wash their hands. And then this latest recommendation, it's specifically looking at the increased use of marijuana by drivers. I mean, we see more and more states now allow recreational or medicinal or both for marijuana, the use of marijuana. And, there's something that editorially we've been talking about for a few years and at the conferences as well of CBD. So a lot of the CBD out there, it's meant to help, with muscle aches and anxiety and sleep. And it, supposedly it has no THC in it. But as some of the drug and alcohol experts that we've talked to have warned the industry, CBD is not federally regulated. The FDA does not federally regulate CBD. So the claims that are being made by these companies could be true, could not be. I mean, we don't know. There's no way to really validate that. So products that maybe a school bus driver takes because they have, muscle pain or arthritis, or they want to get better sleep and they see, it advertises, it doesn't have THC in it. Let me give that a shot. They don't know what they're getting. They don't know what's in that product.
I mean, Ryan, at the end of the day, right, it becomes we have a driver shortage, right? And we need to keep the drivers as informed as possible so they don't get themselves into trouble, right? Because that's what that is, right? That's just like buyer beware. But like as a transportation director, you're like, okay, let's use some common sense and not do that. But
it's awareness again. I mean, just like what we were talking about with the security thing, it's the awareness and knowing it's out there. Do you know what your drivers are using or not? I mean, again, it's like, transportation directors and supervisors and trainers, they're not babysitters. They're not going home with the drivers and, minding what they're taking or they're not taking. A lot of it is hoping and praying that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But it's that vigilance again. It's, the random drug testing. It's the communication. It's the frequent training. A lot of school districts, they're having monthly, if not a more frequent safety training updates with their drivers. Are you guys talking about that stuff? So I think, you see things like this that the NTSB is looking at. And again, they're not saying they're issuing any recommendation against school bus drivers, but what can we glean from this? What can we see out there that's happening in the greater landscape, and how does it apply to what we are doing or what we are not doing in this industry?
Yeah. Other headlines that kind of burned up the wire, EPA's Environmental Justice Grants. Does that mean more money for school districts, Ryan? What's the story on that?
Well, yes, probably not in the way that most of you are thinking. So, of course, we have the $5 billion Clean School Bus program. It's now in year 2. We're just probably about a month or so away from hearing about details about those year 2 funds of $1 billion or so that's going to be available for zero and low emission school buses. But, EPA did last week announce its $100 million Environmental Justice Cooperative Agreement Program, which is basically a grant program that's trying to connect the dots. So we're looking at a lot of different things with green, right? Of course, we're focused a lot on green school buses. School districts, I learned from EPA, are eligible for these Environmental Justice Cooperative Agreement Program grants, and really looking at areas that need help there are non-attainment areas. Oftentimes those are low economic areas, disadvantaged areas, tribal governments. So again, it's very closely aligned with the purpose of the Clean School Bus Grants. I mean, remember the criteria that's been put into place for eligibility for that priority to get the Clean School Bus Grants. A lot of that same priority is being given in this program, and school districts are eligible. So yeah, they perhaps cannot get additional school buses, but this program is designed to address such things as workforce development. So what can school districts do in partnering with a local nonprofit? That's part of the criteria to perhaps train local residents on maybe working on electric school buses, maintenance. The EPA is seeking grants right now. It's going to be open through about the first week of April. So you can check out more information if you head over to epa.gov and go to their Environmental Justice Program.
Excellent, Ryan. Well, guys, we've got a lot coming up with the conferences, summertime. Ryan mentioned it before. STN Expo Indianapolis. We're going to be opening up registration really soon. I do have some exciting news for you. So you got to keep an eye on the STN Indy website. We have a new event that's going to be happening on June 6th. Never done it before. Always wanted to do it. And one of our key partners is stepping up to offer this really unique experience for our guests. So I need you to go to stnexpo.com and click on Indy, the Indianapolis show, which is June 2nd through the 6th. And you guys are going to learn more. It's coming really soon. So I think you're going to want to check this out. Also, we have STN Expo Reno, July 14th through the 19th. Both Indy and Reno will have the Green Bus Summit, as well as our Transportation Director Summit. So if you want to kind of elevate your leadership game, really raise the standards, network with peers, meet supplier partners that really can help you get to the next level in your organization and really help drive the future with so much going on, so many new things. So we love bringing all the stakeholders together under one roof. So guys, that's all inclusive. It all is included with your STN Expo registration. You can save $200 with our super early bird. All that's opening up in February, so really soon. So keep an eye on the website. And then we also have transporting students with disabilities and special needs. So if special needs kids are a big part of your operation, save the date on that one. It's November 15th through the 20th down in Frisco, Texas. So we're excited to have that. Ryan and the team put together stellar content all year long. It's so many people. It takes a village to put it all together and happens in a second. It's like a party, right? You just plan it. It happens. It's over. Takes a long time to cook the beautiful meal. And then, everybody eats it and goes home. And we got to kind of do it again. And how do you make it a better party next year and better event, a better experience? So we love that you guys keep coming back. So it's our passion and our love, this show and this industry. So guys, you're in for a treat, a little sneak preview. Miss Taylor Hannon Ekbatani is talking with Belle Tromp, and we're trying to get Belle to the STN Expo to be one of our featured speakers. So guys, listen up, kind of a sneak preview of maybe what's in store for this summer. Taylor, take it away.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, it's my first podcast of 2023, so I'm excited to be back on the nation here. And I have a really awesome guest with me today, Belle Tromp. She's the director of transportation in probably one of the prettiest places. I think we were talking about it earlier, Snoqualmie Valley. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, Belle, and I'm excited to have you on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm honored to know that I am the first for the year and back to national.
Yeah, back to regular scheduled, weekly podcast. So it's great to be starting up the year strong.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting year. I feel it.
Mm-hmm. So, for those who maybe don't know who you are, can we get a little bit of background, how you got started in the industry?
Absolutely. It's because of a bus driver. Very simple. A bus driver made a difference in our lives. And the funny thing is a little more history is I always wanted to make a difference in the world. I was going to grow up and cure the common cold. So when I had an opportunity to go do charity work overseas, I took that opportunity and I moved overseas and was working for a charity that was making a difference in children's lives that are affected by a recessive gene that's not commonly tested for. And And unfortunately, the problem with bringing the two recessive genes in the parents when they come together is there's a terminally ill child who there are no treatments for these diseases at the time that I was working the charity. And so we were vetting research from around the world and doing some really innovative changes and improvements in research and treatments that were saving lives. So that was my way that I thought I was giving back. And then unfortunately, during that time, I have a special needs son who turned a corner in his renal health and became basically terminally ill because he's not a candidate for transplant or dialysis. And so obviously my focus recircled back to him, and I resigned or retired from charity work, and I moved back here to the States and was caring for him on hospice. And every day was a struggle. He was so sick. He couldn't get out of his hospice bed. His lips were blue. He was gray. The hospice nurse was crying on Friday because she knew she wasn't going to be seeing him on Monday. It got to that severity. And as a mother, as a parent of anyone who's had a child go through something like that, that is your worst fear. And you are in your darkest part that you could probably ever be in your life. And lo and behold, a yellow bus would pull up outside, and a smile, a perk, a spark of life came to my son. And he would get out of that hospice bed and go to school just to ride that school bus because his bus driver, Miss Esther, out of Bellingham, made it so special that he wanted to ride that bus. And at a time that we needed hope, when we were at our darkest part, it was an amazing difference, this driver, that I don't even know to this day that she knows she'd made in our lives. So the good news is he's a fighter. He actually came off hospice. And about a year or two after he'd come off hospice, I was still devoted caring for him around the clock because the condition's still the same. He's still critical and he crashes and goes. And I passed by a school bus with him in the car one day that said, "We need drivers," written on the side of it. And in his way, he looked at me and he goes, "Mom, you need to do that." And I said, "Absolutely. I want to enable other drivers to make that same difference that driver made in our lives." And so that's where I started down the road. And I went and applied, and I wanted to start from the ground up. I wanted to learn everything there was about transportation. I became a sub. I became a contracted driver. I became a driver trainer. I went to every course around the state that I could find in transportation. I became a leader in our local ESD and went into CWU, which is our state program for pupil management, and got my 4-year degree, did my internship for directorship, moved across the state to Pasco, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit here, and became a transportation manager under some great tutelage and mentorship from my director there. And then the opportunity to come be director here at Snoqualmie Valley came up, and I came here to the Valley and met the people and the families and the district that I work for. And I said, this is where I'm called to be and to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Every time I hear that story, it's just so heartwarming. Just, having that impact on your family and then being able to go into the industry and give that impact to other people. It's an amazing story.
I lead a bunch of heroes every single day, and I don't even lead them. I just cheerlead them. They are amazing leaders, and that impact that the driver made in our lives, that's the unconditional love that I try to share with them of the amazing job that they do every day, whether or not they recognize what they do. And school bus drivers are probably the most taken for granted thought of position out there, because a layperson doesn't understand everything a driver does every single day, and their safety and their caring of these kids is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking to a superintendent the other day, and now he's driving a school bus in Ohio, and he was just like, "Oh my gosh, the work that goes into being a school bus driver, even just the pre-check, people just don't know about that."
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Safety is always paramount because we have irreplaceable cargo on our buses. and as my son is an example of. And so making sure that the bus and the vehicle is working properly, and our drivers, they take the time, they devote, they go out and they check the bus from bumper to bumper, top to bottom. They want to know that this bus is going to work, and the things they catch even before the bus gets out, and it's like, nope, we got to get another vehicle out there. And then you bring into the mechanics that run it and keep them in tip-top shape to keep our students safe. It's just amazing, the whole team that comes together and delivers our students. It's just, you have to be part of it to fully understand it.
Yeah. How do you communicate that, either to school bus drivers or the community? How do you communicate that message that this isn't just someone who picks up your child and drives a bus, right? Like, how do you communicate that they're making this impact? They are a part of the educational system.
So we communicate that by having activities and interacting not only with our district-wide, but with our community. We have a Touch a Bus session once a year at least that we have the community come out and drive a school bus, see what it's like and see what we have to go through, as well as do all the student management. The narrative I put out there as far as our team, they are behind the wheel educators. They teach sociology, psychology, current events, math. They spend more time with our students kind of one-on-one than a lot of our educators get a chance to. And we pick them up from their home and drop them off from their home. So we see a side that the schools don't get to see. And we know where they come from. We meet the rest of their family members. And it's just a connection that a classroom educator doesn't get a chance of.
Wow. Yeah. When you put it like that, I mean, it makes such an impact just right there.
And we also have to do with okay, today I am Timmy's best friend, and no, I can't stand him later today. so we have to play the little social worker and the psychologist and build those relationships, teach life skills while we're on board. And that's one of the great roles as far as when I go to IEP meetings with our team members here in the district, I bring out, this is a behind the wheel educator. When we're on the bus, they can work on sounds, they can work on hand movements, physical movements, they can work on life skills of this is how we sit safely and this is how we be respectful and responsible and safe. And it opens an eyes for the rest of the team to go, well, let's embrace transportation, because they are in this role that we do is bringing this kid to success as a viable citizen.
So kind of, making it full circle here, your son, Christopher, has special needs. So how has that kind of helped you as a director of transportation, listen to those parent calls like, hey, my child, they need this. This is what you need to do. You can obviously understand both sides of that.
It gives me an empathy and an insight that unless you've walked in their shoes, you don't fully understand. You can educate yourself, you can gather information, and you can meet with the families, but unless you've actually been in the sleepless nights, been through all the hospital visits as your second home, been through all the procedures, having to do medical procedures every single day with your child, and then getting them on the schedule to get on the bus and get to school and everything else. Unless you've actually been through it, it's, again, something that is not at the forefront of your mind. And I hope that it gives me an insight and a relationship with the families that I wouldn't otherwise have. And I do share it with a lot of our families that have differently able students that I'm like, I can relate to you, Mom, because I know what that's like. And how can I help? And how can we make Timmy more successful on the bus? Or how can we help you? And that's one of the things that I enjoy about working for Snoqualmie Valley is we have all come together, and it's kind of a 360 encompassing of the student that has different abilities and different needs. And we're able to give full service because we all are talking and we're like, hey, we can help here and we can help here. And on the bus, we can do this.
And, that term differently abled, it definitely plays into with evacuations. We wrote about it in the January issue, but looking at a child's abilities and not, their disabilities.
Right. And that's one thing as a mom of a child who has different abilities. I guess that's one of the things I'm very sensitive to, because one of my unfavorite words is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, your son's not normal. And you do get comments of parents like, I've had people tell me, well, aren't you glad that you had your other son, because then you don't feel like a failure as a parent? These are things that are said to you. So it gives me that insight. It's like, no, he is able. He's just differently abled. Mm-hmm. And so you want to focus on their skills. And I bring that into my training. As you said in the evacuation article that was put in there, we do the training on the same. And we teach that through our classes of, hey, we have differently abled students. And when you're loading and unloading, much less in an emergency situation, you need to make sure that even though you don't see that student speaks, or you don't think that student can hear or see, you better be speaking to them and engaging them as if they can, because I bet you they understand more than you think they can, because I've seen it. These are amazing students, and having them in your life is going to make you richer for the experience. But you have to address, this isn't just a rubber stamp of, oh, well, we're having an evacuation, everyone just gets off the bus. You have to take that into account. What are their abilities? What strengths can you build? And then you make a plan for your particular bus. And what works for bus 1 is not going to work for bus 2, because of the different ability of the students that are on there. Mm-hmm. And so you really have to be sensitive to that and be flexible.
And so being a school bus driver who's, maybe not familiar with these different types of, abilities of these students, how can you kind of help them? What are resources that are available either at the school level or, with the parents that can help these school bus drivers better transport every student?
So it definitely takes a team. And so we involve the teams, which is their teachers, their parents, the school psychologist, the social worker, the physical therapist, the speech therapist, the occupational therapist, the principals, everyone that we need to bring in, we bring in to say, how can we best surround the student and help them? And what do we need to know to make the student successful? And that's where I hope that I bring in education to even our district and the districts I've been blessed to be part of, is the IEP, the individual educational plan that we build for the student. Bring transportation in, because we need to understand how to relate to our student, how to better understand our student, how to meet their needs at their level. And so that's, we try to bring the whole team together, and transportation is being recognized as that team here, and it's really amazing.
Mm-hmm. And you touched on it, but can you expand on why it's so important to have transportation at the IEP meetings?
Well, I'll give just on our general educational buses, we will have students with different abilities on our bus. We may have a student on that bus that has an IEP, and the driver's not necessarily made aware of it. So if they have oppositional defiant behavior, if they have ADHD, what tools the driver would use in their toolbox of student management is going to be different than they would if somebody who could understand maybe just, hey, I'm going to say, I need you to stop. Well, if you say that to somebody with oppositional defiant disorder, they're going to immediately be triggered. So you need to make sure that you avoid triggers. You are able to speak to them in a way that they understand. Use verbiage that the families use, that the teachers use, that the school uses, so that it's familiar to them and it's safe, and they're able to respond appropriately. And then you learn what their responses are. But the toolboxes, like, I'll give you a story from when I first started driving school bus. I had a student in the back of my bus, and he would just not sit still. And he was all over the bus. And I'm relating to him as somebody that I'm just thinking, oh, hey, you need to sit down. And I see him not sitting down, and I see him being defiant. And I see him doing inappropriate behaviors. And I had been writing him up, but nobody had gotten back to me, and I was documenting what was going on. Finally, the school goes, well, he's ADHD and he doesn't understand this. And I said, if I had that, mm-hmm. I could have helped him be successful, but now we're already to this point that we have to move him to another bus, to a smaller bus, a specialized bus. I would like him to be able to have restoration in the end, and let's work towards goals of getting him back on our bus. Mm-hmm. But as a driver, had I known that, I would have approached it differently, and I would have probably avoided having to move him to another bus because I would have had that understanding of how to relate to him.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is that these drivers aren't getting that information.
Across the board, I absolutely agree. And that's where we as directors, we have to step up and make our rest of our teams aware of why it's important to have the drivers involved in their students and in their IEP process.
Mm-hmm. So kind of wrapping it all up, Belle, what goals, I don't know if you do resolutions, but what are you kind of looking forward to for 2023?
Always improving, always growing, and making more awareness of the importance that our drivers do, and hopefully making them feel the heroes that they are.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And if you guys haven't read it yet, Belle's story is online. It's called The Impact of a School Bus Driver. So if you haven't, definitely check that out. It's, kind of walks through, and also it talks about your time at Pasco. I know we didn't get to talk about it, but you actually knew Richard Lenhart, who was murdered on the school bus in 2021. So kind of talks about that a little bit as well.
Amazing man.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Thank you so much, Belle. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Outstanding interview. Thank you to Belle and Taylor and Mr. Ryan Gray for all that great information today. Great conversations. Special thanks to our episode sponsor, TransFinder. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being with us all the way on the STN podcast. Guys, visit stnonline.com. Check out the latest, everything going on in the school bus industry. Don't forget, brand new 2023 buyer's guide is out. Lots of data, statistics, analysis on how the industry is doing, all the contacts you need, dealers, OEMs, supplier partners, association partners, engines, anything you need. You're looking at new buses, we got electric powertrains, natural gas, propane, all the things you need, transmissions. Guys, Buyer's Guide, definitely a place you need to go to get all the information you need to kind of keep ahead of the game. Also, check out the January issue. Lots of good stuff in there, recapping our TSD conference from November. So please check it out. Remember, guys, you can listen to this podcast on stnpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to pods. Nation, we love you. We'll see you next week.